Charline, Keran, thank you so much for being guests on the OTT Red Spotlight podcast in conjunction with Bedrock. Here we are at IBC 2023. We're a few hours in. How's it going for you so far?
Super cool.
Enjoying it?
Yes.
Shall we get back together in 4 days' time, see how many pairs of trainers we've worn, how tired we feel, and
what
how much we're looking forward to our own days.
Like.
Absolutely. Well, look, I'm really looking forward to our conversation today. We're going to be talking about embracing hybridity. And from the conversations that I've already had with both of you, number one, I know just how much subject matter expertise you're going to bring to this conversation. And number two, I'm slightly worried about how wide this conversation might get. We ended up in an astronomy conversation last time we spoke about this. I'm not even joking, Keran. I'm absolutely serious. So let's try not to get too wild with the analogies. I'll probably be the most guilty of that if it does happen. But let's go for it and let's see how the conversation goes. First of all, I'd love you to just give a brief introduction to yourself so that people who are listening get a feeling for who you are, what you do now, who you work for, and what your posture is on this topic.
Okay, I'm starting. So my name is Charline. I'm VP Product at Bedrock today. I'm an engineer and I've been working in product management for more than 10 years, and specifically in the field of media industry and streaming for 7 years or so. And super happy to be here today to talk about hybridity because it's a huge topic that we are working on at Bedrock for more than 2 years now, I think. We started 2 years ago, so that's it.
Great, and I'm Keran. I'm a research analyst at Keran. I've been with the company for about a year now. We're quite young, actually. We were a pandemic baby, as my bosses like to say, and before which I actually worked for IBC. So
really?
This is homecoming in a different sort of way. My background is I do know all the shortcuts, and I know all the places to meet people that might otherwise be hiding out. But yeah, it's my background is more in market analysis, so I'm the one who is going fast. That's a trend. Let's talk about that, and then very swiftly going, well, maybe it wasn't quite what we thought it was going to be.
I'd actually like to have that conversation with you because I kind of feel like fast is one of those.
It was a very fast trend. Let's say that.
Fast was a fast trend. I'm also conscious of the background noise. I think as more people are arriving, we might need to keep our mouths close to the microphone. Okay, so look, let's just start off by setting the stage. What is hybridity?
There's a question.
That's a big question. Well, I will start, but for me, hybridity is more like I will see that as a survival response for complex markets that we're facing today in the whole streaming platform industry. There's a kind of need to find new ways to get revenue because all streaming platforms are facing the sort of fatigue of the subscription because I don't know if you know, but I think there is more than 300 platforms around UK, US, and Europe.
That's crazy.
How do you do to choose and pick the one you would like with the content that you would like? It's too wide, and people they definitely cannot buy all that type of platform and subscriptions fees. And I think they can only, the average for France, for example, is no more than 2 subscription for one user.
Yeah.
So it brings we're facing a glass ceiling, and that the creativity to find new ways of attracting people, giving them what they want, that they would like, the type of content, but also more about features and comfort in the way of consuming. It's a kind of response of how do we get people back and how do we attract more and more people.
The topic of hybridity is just so innately interesting because I think one of the things that media and entertainment or broadcast is quite guilty of is that we think we're creating new things and new opportunities that have really existed all along. So, there's a very big resurgence at the moment of thinking about advertising revenue and like how can we get more advertising revenue. But of course, advertising revenue is how broadcasters have been making money for the longest period of time. Yeah. And I remember when I first started focusing on this market, the big thing was, subscription revenue. Now that's where all the money is. But of course, prior to that, you have pay TV operators who have been sending out set-top boxes, which is effectively a subscription. And so we just seem to, as we get new technology on board and we start to think about what the opportunities are in terms of interacting with our audiences and owning those relationships, we're like, ooh, this is a new way of doing something which is effectively, an old principle, but a new way of doing it that's either more efficient or that, you can monetize it at a higher level. And so I think it's exploring these avenues technologically in a way that we, because the big driver, of course, is the competition in the market, like you mentioned. I mean, France has 2 subscriptions. That's crazy low.
Yeah, it is. That's what I thought, actually.
Yeah, because the US market is 5, I think. Yeah, at least. So. But also, I mean, there's more opportunities here. We have super aggregation. So is it that users want one bill, but they're willing to pay for more subscriptions, but they just want one single point of payment? So hybridity, I think, is just this mixture of all of these different avenues of communicating with your clients. And, obviously, because this is business, there has to be a bottom line here. Yeah. And so it's thinking about what are all the different touch points that we can interact with our users, and hopefully all of those will bring either a very lucrative return, or perhaps it's even something very, the return is much smaller, but because you have scale, it's actually quite lucrative for the broadcaster. So, yeah, hybridity is a very interesting, and well, obviously that's why we're here, but it's a very interesting topic.
I almost feel like there's a different podcast there called the Revenue Renaissance.
Yeah.
With what you were just talking about, it just keeps getting reinvented. One of the things that we spoke about, for me, is hybridity can exist on so many different axes. Like we're talking about the kind of platform provision, there's also the hardware element of it, and then there's this layer around the outside of it for me that is actually about what does the future hold. We talked about gamification, AR, it's a topic that just keeps growing and growing. So I think we need to be careful not to take up too much time at the bedrock stand actually talking about all of the things that can be. Well, you probably like that. Let's look at what the drivers of hybridity are. You spoke about revenue from a provision perspective in terms of the organisations behind creating propositions. But actually, if you look from a consumer perspective, Keran, there might be different angles when it comes to what the market is creating in terms of the gravity of demand. Is there anything that you see in terms of the gravitational pull of different things that create hybridity?
I mean, it depends very much, I think, on what market you're talking about.
Geographically or demographically?
Yeah, geographically and demographically. I mean, we always talk about the U.S. market, but the U.S. market is really its own insular thing in itself. I think from a global perspective, we often look at Europe as being this one homogenous market, but there are enormous differences depending on what country you're in. I recently read something which was talking about how 80% of television sets in the EU Big Five are connected to the internet currently. But in France, for example, 70% of that is still through set-top boxes, whereas the other 4 markets, it's all smart TVs. So there's a lot of nuances within these markets. Regulation is also changing around demand for local content. That is going to change the way that the global streamers interact in these markets. Obviously, economic conditions across the world are very challenging at the moment, and that not only affects the consumer side, but it also, I think, affects the decisions that content owners and broadcasters are making in relation to potential new services and where they're going to focus in on, and maybe the urgency around deploying some new tech that might have typically taken sort of 10 years in an R RFP to deploy. They're looking at doing these things faster because there's a lot of urgency at the moment in just the global content market. I mean, we're seeing so much on the US side around the writers' strike and how that might impact potential linear advertising. So there really is just a lot going on in the market at the moment, both on the consumer side and the commercial side, that I think is driving changes at a much more rapid rate than we maybe would have seen previously.
What do you think, Charline?
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think there's this kind of a rush to be closer and closer to the end consumer. And the thing you were saying about friends, but not only friends, I think all the distribution contract that we may have with operators and all this regulation around who owns the final user, and so where we can make new kind of deals.
Yeah.
We were saying that now more and more platforms, they just band on together to make sure that, because the final user, all of this, it's kind of a mess for him. You don't really want to understand, okay, I need to pay this distributor to access this kind of platform, but then I can pay by myself directly on the web for another type of platform, and at the end you only want to pay one thing. And so that's one of the drivers. How to make it clearer also to the final user, but still to be closer to them. So how we make a path between everything, and so
I think this is one of the things, right? Because the UI, the user experience on the consumer side of things, we all want to keep that as simple as possible, right? And as easy for the person to understand, navigate, discover, all of those kind of things. But actually it's getting more and more complicated to work out what to do, I think, on the back end of things. And then the tech stack involved with doing that as well. I think we mentioned AI and that sort of stuff. Does that help things or hinder things? Who does it that make things more complicated for?
For now, it helps at the end, but I agree, there is a form of how we make sure that we don't create something too complex for the end user at some point. And I think we pass through a phase where they need from the platform like a kind of platform helping on the where to search, how to access the proper content, and that's also part of the hybridity. It's hybridity in the experience, because it's not only accessing a catalog where you basically just know where to find, or you're using the basic features that we've seen for years in the basic VOD platform, let's say. Now with the AI, people are more passive. And they are waiting for the platform to speak by itself and to bring the content directly to them. This is why I think fast is also a good example of a mix between hybrid model in terms of revenue and this passive way of consuming that people are looking for. So this is why the drivers are really combined. It's also linked to the way people what they want to consume and how they want to consume. But it brings a lot of creativity, I think, on our way to define new revenue model based on that, because we can definitely use the direct feedback from and even from us, our way of consuming things.
From my perspective, if I think of your accountability at Bedrock, I think it's a really tough job, because it's really polarized, because on one side you've got this massively creative space with all of these influences that you need to think about and consider, and then on the other side it's remarkably objective. How are we going to make sure that the bottom line contribution is as healthy as possible, not only for Bedrock, but for the organisations that are choosing to use Bedrock as their platform? How you strike that balance on a daily basis, I'm not sure.
How do we manage the complexity of all these use cases? That's the question. It's not easy.
I drink a lot of coffee at Bedrock.
There must be something.
And in fact, when we entered the hybrid era, I thought at first that it will be easier for us, because hybrid means everyone's going into the same kind of type of platform, which is a mix. But in fact, with understood that depending on where you come from, if you were a subscribing platform at the first, or you were more advertising platform at first, the main goals are not the same. And so even if at the end we come up with an hybrid context and an hybrid platform for both, in fact it's both ways of doing it. At some point we would like to push more upsell to the subscribe offers, and on the other way around it's how we make sure that we use the proper advertising levers, not to push too much, but how we make it more powerful to bring more revenue on that part. So it's it's always how we build like a core bedrock platform, but using all this kind of use cases, quite complex.
But I think, the thing that strikes me about that is that this really does go back to the earlier point that you made about having that closer relationship with your end user. And even, when we're looking at AI and the way that can be applied, we're gathering more data on our end users than we ever have been. We know more about their habits and their spending and their niche interests, and there is so much data and insights that you can get from understanding their experiences, and then the way to be able to adapt your user experience and serve them the types of ads that they might like, or perhaps somebody is a binge watcher and they love to watch entire box sets over the course of the weekend. Understanding how to serve them ads in that particular environment based on their specific sets, and then backing that up with the right kind of ad insertion, with the right kind of ad inventory. It is such a powerful combination.
Yep.
And users are fickle. The great thing about this industry is that we all use the platforms that we talk about, so we know the types of things that irritate us and the ways that we like to consume that content, and we could all probably name 15 platforms that we've seen that have served us a bad ad experience, and that we're like, I can think of a couple UK ones where I'm like, I will not watch that platform because it keeps serving me the same ad that is 2.5 minutes long, and it has been doing that for 4 years. It's the same ad. And so understanding what users want and building a platform that's responsive to that, you can only win.
Yes, exactly. That is key. And all this hybrid mix of offering that we have now in platforms should be based on what the local users they want to consume and how they want to consume. I don't know if you've noticed, but when Netflix they launched the first free tier, I think it was in Africa, in some countries in Africa. And when they decided to create this free tier, at first how they wanted to make people buy the paid tier was to attract with one specific feature, which was the download to go.
Yeah.
And why is that? It's because there the old connection is not that easy, and so people are really used to download content to make sure that they can consume it quite simply. And so they specifically target on this feature to make people. Once they attract the people with the free content, the free tier, to make them upsell with this specifically featured, and I think it was brilliant. Now that also Netflix is doing, with all when you consume the same account and you share the password, now they're blocking that because everyone is using this feature. So it's exactly how we understand people use the platform in terms of feature and content, and how we create the proper upsell levers and where we want people to go. Consuming more ads or being a paid user.
And if you even think about that one step further, one thing that we're not quite there yet, but I think as an industry we're very close, is dynamic content insertion into things like fast streams. Imagine if somebody served you a fast channel that was specifically the kinds of random the random crap that we all watch, but we're too embarrassed to admit it in like a forum like this. No one wants to talk about.
It sounds like you've been watching the same advert for the last 4 years.
Well, I didn't want to out the brand, but so I won't. But and when you think about the fact that we now also have the opportunity with Gen AI, which nobody wants to talk about it yet because we haven't really got a good answer, but everyone is looking into this. But the way that we can then leverage technology like that to make this scalable, where you're not having to pull manual levers to do this for your audiences, it just happens, and it happens flawlessly.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think we're on the edge of something truly incredible for the industry that is about to happen in terms of viewing experiences that are tailored just for us. And it's going to be a good thing for users, obviously, because we're going to get what we want down to the T, and it's going to be really great for tech companies and broadcasters because they'll be able to monetize this to the nth degree.
Let me just challenge that diplomatically, if I can.
Let's go.
How fundamental or how dramatic do you think that change is going to be? Because I think a lot of people are waiting for that change. Well, we are, because we're in the sector, right, and we know that things should evolve. But I'm really interested because as an analyst, you think that. We've got VP of Product for one of the leading organisations in the space with us. How revolutionary is that change going to be? Because I think it could be massive. I kind of agree with you. But I wonder whether or not it is going to be massive.
Well, okay, so I'm the one who brought it up, so I suppose I've got to nail my colors to the flag here. But so there's an example that I'll give. So prior to my life in media and entertainment, I was on the digital publishing side, and they were talking about programmatic ad creation there, where the specifics of a display ad were individually created for you based on the user browsing data that they had gathered on you up until that point. That has still never happened.
Yeah.
And I think one of the hiccups I think in the market that we have is that we want to believe that everybody's pushing the envelope and that people are really going to take this as far as they possibly can. But when you're actually looking at the companies that are willing to try this new tech to the level that it will need to be somebody needs to build a use case for this, that everybody else can go, they did that really well and it didn't cause them massive loss in share price, or it didn't cost them X billions of dollars, and there's a handful of those companies that are going to do it. Whereas the vast majority of the market, even Europe, I mean, broadcasters who have the highest market share in their markets, it might only be 2 million people, which for a company like Netflix is nothing.
Yeah.
The operators in those markets will say things like, we're too small for Netflix to even want to do an integration with us. So, scale, it might be an issue, but I think the revenue squeeze and the potential that we're seeing around Gen AI, I think we might get there. But I want to hear what Charline thinks about this.
Come on, Charline.
Because your team is the one that's building it.
You're going to do it. You're the spearhead.
Yeah. So Gen AI. No, for me, I really see that as a good, as I said before, a survival opportunity to be more creative and to kind of see where we go. Because, I have a feeling that at some point it will end. There will be too much to this space of generative AI everywhere that will blow. I don't know if you've on the personalization part, for example, I don't know if you've noticed, but we are kind of forcing people to consume the same kind of content, because you've seen, I don't know, romance, and then you have all romance in your personalization.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And it's not that good, in fact. We're pushing too much into people in boxes, and to get aside of this, it's difficult, and I think we will need still that the platform can speak by itself, and not only trying to be too much into the personalization world, so that we can make sure that people get access to what they should also know about the world and not to be too into. I mean,
I've never thought of it like that before, but you're right. You know, if the models or algorithms aren't deep enough to actually give people, you know, access to what's in the peripheries of their vision, then you just keep getting fed the same stuff, and then that becomes a kind of inch wide, mile deep type content that your screen is full of from every different provider. This is what I mean, you know, about the excitement around hybridity for me. It's like actually the big thing that could be coming. I really hope that the big thing is coming, because it could be something that makes people go, wow, this is amazing.
Well, the challenge, I think, is always going to be around the data, right? Because it's the way that you are able to analyze your data and create sort of clever matchups that make sense for your users. So to a large extent, that will depend on your content library, obviously. Like, you can only recommend what you have rights to. But the other side of it is being able to, instead of manually figure out what your metadata is, or worry that you're overpopulating your metadata library to an extent that you're kind of getting recommendations for everything instead of something that is relevant to you. It's such a fine balance, and I think that's, you know, any analytics company will, you know, there's a reason these things are proprietary, and why, you know, the research that we do at Keran, we found that analytics is one of the biggest things that people constantly outsource, because it is so complex. And there's also a reason why we've been talking about personalization and analytics on the front end since the beginning of streaming, really, because it's really challenging. And users pay a lot of attention to it. Like, if there's a ribbon that you are served on your streaming platform that's not relevant to you, people are like, what is, why?
I've got one more question to ask both of you, but before I ask that question, so in reality I've got two. I just want to touch on fast. You know, it's been such a big topic over the course of the last couple of years. You know, what does it represent to you in the context of hybridity? You know, it's something that's kind of exploded. I think that one of the springboards for this topic was the interesting Netflix results that came out a couple of years ago, that they mentioned the word fast, and everyone on LinkedIn was talking about fast. You're shaking your head there. It seems like you've got a strong posture on this one. What does fast represent in the context of hybridity to you?
Well, first of all, fast for us, it's for us bedrock. We've seen that as a, you know, it's a buzzword of something that already existed for years. It's just coming from the US.
Charline said it.
Yes, but
She's just done it.
Said it.
But it's coming from the US, where they were not really used to this whole advertising revenue model. So I think this is why, and we're always looking at the US, and that's probably also why we took that as a wow, let's do this, but we're already doing this, by the way. But when you link that to the hybrid context, for us it's more to see it not only on the advertising and way to monetize a channel, basically, but more as a new way to create content which is not a live channel already existing, like a classic channel, but more a new way to present content for the user, and so to address this hybrid, not revenue model, but hybrid way of consuming. When I talked just before about this old way of seeing a streaming platform, which is basically just accessing a catalog, there we are really pushing to the user not only your recommendation, but a full channel which is based on the content I think in the future will be the content you may like, all in a kind of playlist way of consuming.
I think it's a great point to wrap up our dialogue for today, to say thank you so much for your interaction in the OTT Web and Bedrock Streaming podcast, and so I hope you really enjoy IBC 2023. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.